Krishna, Krishna. Hari Hari, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Well, it's one of those days. It's out in the country here, and it's quite breezy. And what I'm thinking is, there's a tree branch somewhere that keeps bumping into the wiring for the internet, and it keeps going down. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. It's very frustrating. This is part 3 here. But it's the material world. Hare Krishna, it's always something. Hare Krishna. So I was looking at the 3 things that are favorable, and the 6 in the Upadesamrta. So being enthusiastic, this is for devotional service, being enthusiastic, endeavoring with confidence, being patient, and acting according to regulative principles. So there's different types of regulative principles. For formal, institutional initiation within the society, there are 4 regulative principles. No meat eating, fish or eggs. No intoxication. Prabhupada says even coffee and tea. No illicit sexual activity, which basically means just for procreation. This is ideal, and this is the vow a candidate takes. And no speculation, gambling, which means accepting the conclusion of the Vedas. That it means something else other than, no, it means what it means. So that's a set of regulative principles that is not necessarily spiritual. That's for regulating human life, civilized human life. No killing and eating animals, no intoxicants, no illicit sexual behavior, no gambling. That's like basic, because gambling also means cheating. Gambling is a kind of cheating. You're trying to get something for nothing if you're gambling. So the regulative principles being talked about here are the regulative principles of devotional life. And these regulative principles are Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. Shravanam, hearing. Kirtanam, chanting. Vishnu, Kirtana, Vishnu, chanting about and remembering Krishna. Vishnu Smaranam, remembering Krishna. Those are the regulative principles. Hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna. Five, abandoning association of non-devotees. 6, following in the footsteps of previous acharyas. These 6 principles undoubtedly assure the complete success of pure devotional service. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Prabhupada's commentary. Devotional service is not a matter of sentimental speculation or imaginative ecstasy. Okay, let's read that again. Devotional service is not a matter of sentimental speculation or imaginative ecstasy. I'm going to read that again. Hey, Jocelyn. It's internet connection's having trouble today. I don't know. Keeps going out, but keep going anyway. So, in a purport to the verse, Prabhupada, the first line he says is, devotional service is not a matter of sentimental speculation or imaginative ecstasy. Its substance is practical activity. Practical activity. Devotional service. Practical activity. Rupa Gosvami, in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, has defined devotional service as follows. Anyabalasita sunyam jnana karmad jnanavitam anakulyena krishnanu silanam bhaktir uttama. Uttama bhakti, or unalloyed devotion unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, involves the rendering of devotional service in a way that is favorable to the Lord. This devotional service should be free from any extraneous motive and devoid of fruit of karma, impersonal jnana, and other selfish desires. Bhakti is a sort of cultivation. As soon as we say cultivation, we must refer to activity. Cultivation of spirituality does not mean sitting down idly for meditation, as some pseudo-yogis teach. Such idle meditation may be good for those who have no information of devotional service. And for this reason, it is sometimes recommended as a way to check distracting materialistic activities. Yeah, that kind of yoga is, sometimes it's compared to, like, if a child is very naughty, you just go sit in the corner. He's doing all kinds of nonsense things, causing a big disturbance. Go sit in the corner till I tell you to come out. So, cultivation of spirituality does not mean sitting down idly for meditation. It may be good for those who have no information of devotional service, and sometimes is recommended as a way to check distracting materialistic activities. Meditation means stopping all nonsensical activities, at least for the time being. Devotional service, however, not only puts an end to all nonsensical mundane activities, but also engages one in meaningful devotional activities. Sri Prahlad Maharaj recommends Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Pada Sevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atma Nivedanam. These are the 9 processes of devotional service. 1. Hearing the name and glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hearing. Chanting His glories. Remembering the Lord. Serving the Lord's feet. Worshipping the deity. Offering obeisances unto the Lord. Acting as the Lord's servant. Making friends with the Lord. Surrendering oneself fully to the Lord. Shravanam, or hearing, is the first step in acquiring transcendental knowledge. One should not give oral reception to unauthorized persons, but should approach the proper person as recommended in Bhagavad Gita. Tadvidhi pratipatina pariprasnena sevaya Upadesamrta te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Translation: just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively. Render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. It is further recommended in the Mandaka Upanishad. Tad Vijnanatam Sagunam Eva Bigachat. Translation: to understand that transcendental science, one must approach a bona fide spiritual master. Prabhupada continues, thus this method of submissively receiving transcendental, confidential knowledge is not merely based on mental speculation. In this regard, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu told Rupa Gosvami, Brahmananda Brahmatikona Bhagavana Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. Translation: in the course of traversing the universe created by Lord Brahma, some fortunate soul may receive the seed of bhakti, the creeper of devotional service. This is all by the grace of Guru and Krishna. It's actually very, very rare. I remember the example that I used to hear when they were discussing this, how it's very rare that someone comes in contact with this Krishna consciousness and can actually accept it and the seed of devotion begin to grow in their heart. It's very rare. It's rare. And the way I heard it described is like, there are these sea-going turtles, giant big turtles. They live in the ocean. They're not fish. They can't stay underwater. They can stay underwater for a while, like maybe 5 or 6 minutes, but then they got to come up for air. But they live in the ocean. And so one of these big giant turtles, he's living in the ocean, and he's been living in there a while, and he's got to come up for air. And as he's coming up for air, there's a log. Where this log came from, who knows? There's this log with a hole in it just the size of his head. And he's coming up for air, and he sticks his head right through the hole in the log. It's said that it's that rare that a devotee, they come in contact with this Krishna consciousness and they get this seed of devotion in their heart. It's that rare. It's a way to try and look at it. The material world is a place of confinement for the living entities who are by nature anandamaya, pleasure-seeking. They actually want to be free from the confinement of this world, of conditional happiness, but not knowing the process of liberation, they are bound to transmigrate from one species of life to another, from one planet to another. In this way, the living entities are wandering throughout the material universe. When, by good fortune, one comes in contact with a pure devotee and hears from him patiently, one begins to follow the path of devotional service. Such an opportunity is offered to a person who is sincere. Prabhupada says here, his International Society for Krishna Consciousness is giving a chance to humanity at large. If by fortune one takes advantage of this opportunity to engage in devotional service, the path of liberation opens up. One should accept this opportunity to return home, back to Godhead, very enthusiastically. Without enthusiasm, one cannot be successful. Even in the material world, one has to be very enthusiastic in his particular field of activity in order to become successful. A student, a businessman, artist, or anyone who wants success in his line must be enthusiastic. Similarly, one has to be very enthusiastic in devotional service. Enthusiasm means action. But action for whom? The answer is, one should always act for Krishna. In all phases of life, one has to perform devotional activities under the direction of a spiritual master. in order to attain perfection in Bhakti Yoga. It's not that one has to confine or narrow one's activities. Krishna is all-pervading. Therefore, nothing is independent of Krishna, as Krishna himself states in Bhagavad Gita. So Prabhupada is saying you don't have to give up your activities, you have to add Krishna. And I remember also hearing these nice little examples that all the material things someone has, whatever it is, you know, their home, their job, their money, everything, their friends, their whatever it is they have, materially it's all zeros because it all ends. It gets finished. So it's all zeros. But if you add Krishna, you put, what happens when you put one in front of a lot of zeros? You get 100, 1,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000,000, 1,000,000,000,000. You put the one in front. So here Prabhupada's saying, you don't give up. You know, don't give up your life and wander off into nowhere, or no, you live your life, but you add Krishna. And learn to do everything as an offering to Krishna, and what to avoid doing that's not helpful, and what to try to do more, which is helpful. In that way, become more and more Krishna conscious, and chanting Hare Krishna, becoming more and more purified of entanglement. So Prabhupada says it's not one has to confine or narrow one's activities. Krishna is all-pervading. Krishna is everywhere. There is nothing independent of Krishna. Not even this material world is not independent. And Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Maya tatam midam sarvam jagat avyaktamurtina matstani sarvabhutani nachaham teshvavastitam. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. Personally, I'm not in them. It's like, I manifest, I'm all-pervading my energies, but personally, I'm not directing everything personally. Like, the way I've heard that described is like, everyone is actually, like in this country, everyone is serving the government. And the head of the government here is the president. So ultimately, he's in control of everything, more or less. There's a system of checks and balance, but he's the president. So it's not like he's, but his presence can be felt in all the different rules and all the different, you can do this, you can't do that, you got to pay your taxes, so on and so forth. So he, it's all pervading. But he personally is, he's sitting in that building the presidents live in, the White House, and he's eating his breakfast. He has his family, So all beings are in me, but I'm not in them. I'm on my planet, eating my breakfast with my friends. Under the direction of the bona fide spiritual master, one has to make everything favorable for Krishna's service. So Prabhupada gives an example here. He says, at present we're using a dictaphone. That was the high tech at the time, dictaphone. It didn't have laptops and cell phones. You're looking at the 60s, 1960s. So at present we're using a dictaphone. And that's how Prabhupada wrote his books. He didn't necessarily write. Maybe the books in India before he came to the West. I don't know how he did that, and he wrote a dictaphone. But here, all of the other books, it's all dictated, it's all spoken, and just written down. It's all spoken. For example, at present, we're using a dictaphone. So Prabhupada's sitting there, he's using the dictaphone. And he's saying this. I'm using a dictaphone. The materialist who invented this machine intended it for businessmen or writers of mundane subject matters. He certainly never thought of using the dictaphone in God's service. But we are using this dictaphone to write Krishna-conscious literature. Of course, the manufacture of the dictaphone is wholly within the energy of Krishna. All the parts of the instrument, including the electronic functions, are made by different combinations and interactions of the 5 base types of material energy. Bhumi, Bhumi, Jala, Agni, Vayu, and Akash. Earth, water, air, fire, and ether. The inventor used his brain to make this complicated machine. And his brain, as well as the ingredients, were supplied by Krishna. So everything's from Krishna. The manufacturer, the elements that make up the machine, the inventor's brain. According to the statement of Krishna, Matstani Sarabhutani, everything is depending on my energy. Thus, the devotee can understand that since nothing is independent of Krishna's energy, everything should be dovetailed in his service. That's why there's a reaction if something is not used. If someone tries to exploit Krishna's energies, there's a reaction because everything is Krishna, it all belongs to him. So it causes a disturbance, a static, a karmic reaction. Because it's all connected to Krishna. When someone gets in there and they try to, so it causes a problem. Endeavor executed with intelligence in Krishna consciousness is called utsaha, or enthusiasm. The devotees find the correct means by which everything can be utilized in the service of the Lord. Nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchate. The execution of devotional service is not a matter of idle meditation, but practical action in the foreground of spiritual life. So Prabhupada's going through the list of what's favorable. So enthusiasm, endeavoring with confidence, that's the active part, endeavoring with confidence. And now he's discussing patience. One should not be impatient in Krishna consciousness. Indeed, this Krishna consciousness movement was started single-handedly, and in the beginning there was no response. But because we continued to execute our devotional activities with patience, people gradually began to understand the importance of this movement. Now they are eagerly participating. Yeah, I was there in the beginning. I met Prabhupada in 1967, and there was nothing, There was nothing. There were no books. There was just a handful of devotees, and the building we were living in, this was in Boston, Massachusetts. It's a northern state. It gets very cold there in the winter. The neighbors, their children, teenagers probably, thought we were just crazy people, and they would drive by and throw rocks through the windows. So there was no glass in any of the windows, freezing cold. I woke up one morning covered with snow. We used to have to stuff cardboard in the windows. The building itself had been a funeral home, and the prasadam hall was where the caskets had been displayed. I mean, it was pretty crude in the beginning, It was really crude. But there was Prabhupada, and there was Krishna, and there was Krishna prasadam. And the classes, a lot of times, were given from the manuscripts. That Prabhupada was using a dictaphone to speak these books. And one of the devotees in that temple in Boston was in charge of his service was to transcribe there was cassettes, the old tape recording cassettes. So in the afternoons he was upstairs in his little makeshift office with a milk crate with a typewriter on it, a manual typewriter, and he was listening to these tapes and he was typing out what Prabhupada was dictating. He was typing it out. So that was, the technology, that was a situation, and that was in the beginning. And even in the beginning before that, when Prabhupada, before he even left India, there was nothing. nothing. He tried to do some preaching in India and establish something called the League of Devotees. And someone there who had some buildings offered for Prabhupada to use the buildings as his preaching center. And I think he made one disciple there, but it just didn't work. People weren't interested. They would say things like, Swami, we already know Krishna. We need technology now. India's backward, with industry, and it has to keep up with the world economically. We need, the colleges, we need the sciences, we already have Krishna, we don't need Krishna now. We need these other things. So no one was coming to hear Krishna consciousness. We already know. And at one point, the person that had given the facilities to Prabhupada asked for them back, because there was a group of ladies that wanted to make that their club or something, and they had money. So they actually kicked Prabhupada out. And then Prabhupada, all right, I got to get this out of India. And then he approached the steamship owner, that woman who owned the steamship company. And Hare Krishna. So he had nothing. And he was walking through the streets of Calcutta. He was printing and writing and printing Back to Godhead magazine, and he would go through the streets with it. But nothing was happening till he came to the West. And now it's everywhere, all over the world. Krishna. So Prabhupada's saying, this particular book, let's see when this was published in 1975. Okay. So I don't know when it was actually written. It may have been written earlier and then published in 1975. But it was one of the earlier, so Prabhupada was seeing the success. So he's sitting there with the dictaphone, and he's saying about patience from his experience. Don't be impatient. Krishna consciousness movement was started single-handedly. In the beginning, there was no response. But because we continued to execute our devotional activities with patience, people gradually began to understand the importance, and now they're eagerly participating. One should not be impatient in discharging devotional service, but should take instructions from the spiritual master and execute them with patience, depending on the mercy of Guru and Krishna. Yeah, this is kind of related. One of the Prabhupada's disciples approached him and they said, Prabhupada, when we go on Sankirtan in the street, what can we do to engage the crowd more? What can we do to get them more involved? And Prabhupada's answer was, your business is not to please a crowd. Your business is to please Krishna. To please Krishna, crowd will be automatically pleased. like water the roots of the tree and all the leaves and branches flourish. So that sort of relates here when Prabhupada is saying execute devotional service with patience even if no one's coming. Understand the importance. Will not be impatient in discharging devotional service, depending on the mercy of Guru and Krishna. The successful execution of Krishna-conscious activities requires both patience and confidence. A newly married girl naturally expects offspring from her husband, but she cannot expect to have them immediately after marriage. Of course, as soon as she is married, she can attempt to get a child, but she must surrender to her husband, confident that her child will develop and be born in due time. Similarly, in devotional service, surrender means that one has to become confident. The devotee thinks, Avyasya Rakshibe Krishna. Krishna will surely protect me and give me help for the successful execution of devotional service. This is called confidence. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So it's like, this is really heavy. It's like all the to-do stuff, you know. Yesterday was not to do. Today's like, it's like heavy to-do stuff, you know. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yeah. This is really heavy. The purport gets even heavier. It gets really, really heavy. Really heavy. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Though not everyone is going to be able to follow all of this. Not everyone. Whatever someone can do, it's to their eternal benefit. Not everyone's going to be able to chant 16 rounds every day, attentively. Not everyone's going to be able to do that. Not everyone's going to be able to follow 4 regulative principles. No coffee or tea. They're not going to be able to follow. No pot smoking every now and then. They're not going to be able to follow. Does that mean Krishna consciousness is completely unavailable to them? No. No. Krishna's, in his Lord Chaitanya, he's giving freely. And there's a benefit always in Krishna, always. But Srila Prabhupada has a worldwide movement to try to spread this magnanimous grace that simply by saying Krishna's name once, devotional life begins. He's trying to, his mission, and for that, there are devotees that have to take leadership positions. There has to be organization, there has to be management, there has to be civilized behavior. So, this is all in Prabhupada's books. So he goes on and gets a lot heavier about what to do. And I'm remembering there's a prayer when someone does, take the big step and actually approach a spiritual master for formal initiation. There's a mantra that is recited at their initiation. So I'm trying to find it on the net. Just when I want it, it's gone. Well, basically, kind of a loose translation is purified or unpurified. One who remembers the lotus-eyed Lord upon leaving the body. Something, maybe, liberated, or goes home, or attains the spiritual world. Maybe I can find it this way, purified or unpurified. Google's smart. Google knows everything. Oh, come on, Google. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna, Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. No. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Oh, okay. Thank you, found it. Okay, let's see what we got here. It's called the Pundari Kaksha mantra. And Hare Krishna. Okay, here's a translation. It's Om Apavitra Pavitrova Sarva Avastam Gato Piva Yat Smaret Pundari Kaksham Sa Ya Abhyantara Suchi. And the translation is, if one is impure or pure, or even in all other conditions, he remembers Pundari Kaksha, another name of Vishnu, meaning with lotus eyes. He becomes pure outwardly as well as inwardly. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Pure or impure, by remembering the Lord, they become pure, outwardly and inwardly. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna's, the Lord is so powerful like that, so pure, that sometimes the example is given out in India and other places around the world. A lot of times in the rural areas, the people just go out into the field to pass stool and urine. They don't build complicated structures. They just go out to the field. When the sun comes, it purifies. Even the stool and urine, it purifies. So Krishna is like that. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Krishna Chaitanya. Govinda.